I'm an Army veteran. I served in the Gulf during the first Gulf War, and I also served in Cyprus. This is a Royal Corps Transport. This was my cap badge. This is from when I was out in the first Gulf War, obviously a desert rat. And this is in support of the Ukrainians. Ukraine country, with the Ukraine flag, and Ukraine 2022.
So I joined the military in 1993 as a driver in the Royal Logistics Corps.
It was a number two, wasn't it? I've been a barber for about 25 years, left the military in 1996, got up to the rank of platoon sergeant for a short period of time, served in Northern Ireland, served in Bosnia, and was an infantry soldier throughout my career. Is that all right for you? Good stuff. Yeah, 24th of February was a bit of a distressing day. We obviously saw what was going on.
I guess the same as most people, we were all watching with interest to see what was going to happen. Will it happen, won't it happen? And then obviously it happened.
One of the first things that struck some of us, and particularly me, was the sort of genocide approach where people were being obliterated, murdered.
Disgusted. Disgusted with what one person could do to innocent people.
Bosnia was a mass genocide attack, and it just took the memories back to Bosnia.
I saw it in Iraq. It brought back some memories of Iraq, and I just thought to myself, I need to help.
A neighbour of mine wanted to go with a truck to Romania and asked me to get some belongings for him. And because I have this shop and I'm quite a big part of this community, I just asked a few people to give me some donations for my neighbour. This shop got filled within a matter of hours with donations, and the guy who was going to Romania could only take a couple of bags from me. So I then contacted some of my military veteran friends.
He phoned me up, he said, "What are you doing next week, Andy?" I said, "Working, I suppose." And he says, "Do you fancy a trip to Ukraine?" I said, "To help him out?" I said, "Yeah, put me down for it."
I spoke to Steve on the phone and said, well, I'll volunteer as a driver. If we can get a van, then I'm happy to come.
Went up to my boss at work and said, "I need next week off. I'm going to Ukraine." They gave me the time off straight away.
Just say hello, everybody. We set off on the first journey on the 5th of March, got to Ukraine border on the 7th of March. Which started off as just one van. We ended up with 16 vehicles, 32 drivers, and around about 40 tons of aid. I've been over to Ukraine 7 times now, and we've been to various places. We support the soldiers because obviously the soldiers are the ones on the front line having all the problems. We've also been involved in taking 4-wheel drive vehicles to the front lines. This gentleman was a soldier of the Azov battalion who we handed over a vehicle to. That went onto the front lines and served with the Azov battalion.
Yeah. Guys for Great Britain, in Azov, they're forever.
I've taken over thermal image cameras so that they can see at night time with heat sources. Recently we've been taking over army boots, army surplus uniforms, and some medical equipment for them for battlefield first aid. We get donated lots of military equipment. These are absolutely fantastic for what's going to be happening pretty soon when the temperatures reach around about -20 in the coming weeks. So we're going to get 200 to 300 sets of those. Hats, jumpers. This is a typical patrol sack or day sack for any soldier. But this was donated by one of the veterans as well. And camping cookers, that contains a whole cooking in kettle system. Camping pans, water bottles, and lots more cooking equipment, even down to mini first aid kits and survival blankets. These are all donated by military veterans. This is a typical chest rig which a soldier would wear. There's many versions of this.
I also went to Lviv, delivered some thermal imaging cameras, scopes, etc. 7 hours after I left there, it got hit with a rocket. I also afterwards I went to a military barracks to deliver a drone. I left the place at 9:05. At 9:09, the place was hit by 4 hypersonic missiles. So I was lucky to get out. Fortunately, they hit an empty building. So I'm lucky. They've been close twice to me, but it doesn't faze me. I'm helping them. I've been there, seen it, done it. I've got the t-shirt.
Bottom row, extreme left. I don't think anybody who's served in a conflict zone cannot be taken back to it. You know, PTSD sufferers, it just takes a small trigger So yeah, it was just an instant take back to, you know, the memories that we sort of served through. One of the things that struck me most in Bosnia was a young boy came up to me with a flute and offered it to me for some coffee, and I asked him where his parents were, and he showed me a piece of shrapnel and told me that's all that remains of my parents. And that memory for the refugees, when we started to see the refugees, and that sparked a huge sort of emotional reaction. One of the trips that I did was into Kiev and Bucha and Irpin. When I got there, it was completely destroyed. I was shown around places where the mass graves were. One particular story was that a church, 86 civilians were inside praying, females and children. The Russians came along, shot everybody inside, took one of their diggers outside into the garden, dug a huge hole and buried all 86 of them in the state that they were in. Just all civilians, right behind the church. I stood less than 100 metres away from it. When you physically stand in the footsteps of people who've fallen for the wrong reasons, it gets to you emotionally, and it's heartbreaking. It can be very emotional, particularly for a soldier, because we're there for certain reasons to aid us in, you know, going over these memories to try and process them. But it's a very emotional situation, and it can't be put into words what it feels like, but it's distressing to see it. It's heartbreaking to know that it's happened, but it's also rewarding to know that we are there providing much needed aid to the people who've survived. The mass graves in the first tour of Bosnia, it has a different effect on you. So it helps me in the fact that those people who I couldn't really help back then, these people now have had a chance to help. Excuse me. This has given me a state of mind where I can now be thankful for who I am rather than not like who I was.
I buried dead bodies in Iraq. I saw things in Iraq that nobody should ever see. And that hurt. And seeing what Putin was doing to these innocent people out in Ukraine, I knew I could help. And being able to help them out has worked absolute wonders. I suffer with PTSD myself. I have been undergoing counselling for the last 18 months. It took me 30 years to seek help.
These people now we've had a chance to help, and that's probably one of the things that helps me suppress any emotional connection that I have with my PTSD.
It's a healing process as well, you know, because I lost a good friend in Bosnia, probably my best friend. He died in a tragic accident. That was kind of like the catalyst for the end of my military career, really, because I couldn't get over what happened to my friend. All those thoughts back, they come back when you go into Ukraine.
Doing this, running the aid out to Ukraine, helping people out, it gives you a sense of purpose. You're doing something good.
Well, I started off at 16. I joined the Territorial Army, and then I went and joined the regular. I ended up with the Royal Signals, and I did about 5 years regular with the Royal Signals. So I had some friends in Ukraine that I'd met through the internet, sort of common interests like photography and airsoft. When the Russians came, I was horrified. Yeah, all I could think about was my friends there, what was going to happen to them. Because my friend Alina, I offered her and her husband somewhere to go if they needed to get out. If Ukraine was going to fall, I'd have brought them over to England, but they said they would stay and fight. I thought that was something honourable and I should help them. If it hadn't been for my family, I would have gone and fought for the Ukrainians, but I've 3 children and responsibilities, so I just thought, what can I actually do? And I thought, I'll support the families of those who are fighting. I saw there was a lot of people starting to come out as refugees. I saw sort of pictures and videos of soldiers stood there kissing the children and the wives goodbye, not knowing if they'd ever see them again, and that, it touched me. It brought me to tears a few times. And so I thought, what can I do? I got a phone call asking would I be prepared to drive an ex-NHS frontline ambulance out to Ukraine, and I said obviously yes. It was filled with generators which Northern Power Grid had donated. I've topped it up with medical equipment. We drove through the border into Ukraine from Medjica in Poland, and then we headed through to Lviv, and then from Lviv down to Kyiv. Once we'd emptied the truck, we went and got it all serviced up, and the next day we headed down to Kherson to the front lines. The roads were absolutely atrocious. It looked like the surface of the moon. So this was one of the bridges that had been destroyed, heading up to the front. Either side of the road there was destroyed tanks. You can see the Z markings, and there's another tank that our guys took out. Russian positions which had been hit, there was civilian cars blown up, churches, schools demolished, artillery pieces just blown up everywhere, and you know, it was like the Somme battlefield. See another heavy artillery piece. When you zoom in on it, you can really see the damage done. They'll never fire again, thank God. When we arrived, it was starting to get dark, so we spent the night in one of the house with the unit, and then the next morning got up bright and breezy, and the commanding officer said he was going to take us, show us the Russian positions and their frontline positions he just prepared.
Karl is on a Russian position. You enjoyed yourself, Karl? Yeah?
There was a horrible stench, unclean. There was like food wrappers laid about, rats and mice everywhere. And that's the entrance into one of the Russian bunkers. You can see the shrapnel hole in the box. Yeah. And just general equipment left everywhere, from sort of bullets to hand grenades to RPG tubes. That was an SBG-9 rocket that was left by the Russians on the position, so we picked that up and took it back to the guys because they have the weapon system to fire it, so that's one extra. One of the biggest things that stuck out to me was a pile of underpants stood up against a tree. Camouflage underpants, there must have been 20 or 30 of them. The story that I got told was that the Russians don't like their underpants, they're very uncomfortable to wear, so they steal the Ukrainians or civilian ones. While I was at the Russian positions, there was various items of clothing laid about. This was a jacket that I found on a Russian position. It's the Russian Digiflora cam. They're all wearing it now. It's what they call the Ratnik program of kit. The guys presented me a World War II Russian helmet, and they all signed it, and apparently these were new old stock that there was issuing to the Russian troops now, and as you can see, in 1945 there were just piles of them piled up everywhere. And these were a couple of patches, or chevrons as the Ukrainians, that's a Russian shoulder flash and a Russian officer's epaulette. These were taken from a Russian that one of the guys killed, and he didn't want to keep them, so he gave them to me. This is a night vision driving periscope from out of a tank, and as you can see, the glass has been shattered. It's gone over a mine, and then finished it off with a 66mm Law. It's up for sale on eBay at the moment. Try and raise some money for the guys.
Do you worry about them?
Yeah, constantly. I'm in contact with as many as I can. Most nights I'll spend sort of halfway into the night, sat talking with all the guys, making sure they're all good and seeing what I can do to help and what they need, and if there's anything I can do, I'll do it. So one of the things is all your friends sign your flag, so took my Ukrainian flag out and my friends sign it. The people, they're just so friendly and they find out you're British and they just hug you. And there's been quite a few times when it's moved me to tears. You know, you see the suffering that them people are going through and they've still got spirit and they've still got charisma about them. They're just, every one of them's a warrior. They're just a race of people that you'll never kill. Donations are getting an awful lot slower now. I think a lot of people have given a lot, but there's a lot of people who have given nothing. If you can afford to give something, dig deep. The people need it, you know. This could be you. This could be any of us who's in this position. And I'd like to think that if we were in that position, there'd be people there to help us. You're only on this earth once. There's no trial run on it, and if you go through life selfish, not helping others, where's that going to put you in the long run? You know, if you can help people and you can make someone else's life better, you've done something with your life.